We have a very special segment that we're going to start with. Through the day, we have lined up sessions that will give us opportunities to learn from market leaders, from brands that help, that connect. And today, the next panel that we'll be talking about is crafting exclusivity, premiumizing of Indian retail landscape, and how is it that we can take this landscape forward, getting to learn from those who've added on so much more value. We are all set to present to you our next set of speakers and panelists joining in. We're hoping that the last 10 minutes can be for an interactive session with all of you, our delegates, so feel free to ask questions. May I present to you our panel moderator. We have with us Hemlata Vedula, partner, Deloitte India, and it is such a pleasure to have you here. Requesting all of you to please put your hands together for ma'am as she joins us on stage, and she's going to help us weave together this segment. As a respect to our next set of speakers, may I request those who would like to network to please join us a little bit on the sidelines as we welcome our panelists. We have with us Mr. Abhishek Bansal, Executive Director, Pacific Malls. Let's welcome him with a round of applause. May I present to you Mr. C.K. Venkatraman, MD, Titan Company. Please put your hands together as we are bringing to you industry veterans here on stage. May I present to you Mr. Dilip Kapoor, Founder, High Design. Thank you so very much, sir, for your presence. Let's hear it up for Mr. Suraj Bhatt, CEO, Ethnic Business, Aditya Birla Group. My delegates, please do put your hands together as we welcome Mr. Abhishek Bajpai, CEO, Apparel Group India. May I also present to you Mr. Karthik Balagopalan, MD, Puma India. And like we said, there can be no better branding than the way he's dressed up. Loving the jacket out there, sir. Thank you so very much for your presence. And let's look forward to this panel discussion. We mentioned that after the discussion, we'd like to have all our audience members ask questions. So maybe the last 5 to 7 minutes can be for them, ma'am.
Can you hear me? Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Hope you're having fun and networking and learning over the last 2 days. So as per a report, by 2030, India's household spend would be close to 237 billion. And it's growing at about 10% per year, the CAGR. And here comes the need to have a differentiation and premiumization of this whole sector. So obviously, there's been a premiumization across FMCG, across the food, the travel, the experiential, and also in the retail industry. So over the next 30, 40 minutes, we're going to take some insights from our esteemed panel. Each of them, they have been introduced, and each of them represent a very different segment. And so we're going to take and hear their views about what they think about the premiumization in retail. So maybe very quickly to start off, I'll just go with you, Abhishek. If you could talk about what do you think is a premiumization in retail and maybe 1 or 2 factors which are determining those.
Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you, MAPIC, for inviting us on stage today. We've been discussing about premiumization, I think, now for years. And what we see is the customer aspiration growing as the country is growing. And when aspiration grows, people look up to newer things that they want to include in their daily lifestyle. So mall being collaboration of all separate brands coming together, I think one very, very direct link is how we can upgrade our tenant mix to a more premium tenant mix. That is our endeavor everywhere. Of course, suitable to the catchment where we have the mall. Just because we have the mall somewhere, we can't think of any and every brand. It has to be suitable to the city and the catchment. So it's our regular endeavor to how to up the mix of the mall and make a more premium mix. The other thing that we focus as operating shopping centers is how do we give a more premium service to the customer. And there are some basics which we still feel the customer prefers over everything else, which is your basic hygiene, security, services, parking. If we can give those 3, 4 touch points and make them as premium and give them the safety and security, that makes a big difference even with these basic needs, which I feel a lot of developers are now focusing on. And these basic things will make a big difference to the whole premiumization field. And I think it's a continuous process, and we are, learning and implementing new things every year.
Thank you, Abhishek. So maybe Venkat, we all know Titan, but yeah,
Yeah, I
your
would like
views.
to call out two things which are driving this, in a way accelerating this. One is, I think, there is an increasing level of socialization that's happening across the country. So when you're increasingly socializing, when you're putting out your best form of yourself to others, so whether it is the 10,000 rupee wine or the 25,000 rupee cutlery set and crockery set, or of course the home decor and all that, and what you wear. So the whole lifestyle and socializing is one big driver of premiumization across categories. The second thing is the social media and its exposure right across, and how people in the smallest of towns are actually getting to see products of, the finer things in life, and actually realizing that there's no point in keeping money, saved, and it's time to really enjoy things. So these two things I would call out as important.
Absolutely, Venkat. So Dilip, maybe you would want to add your views on it.
Hi. I think the premium customer has always been there. It's just that the premium end of it is growing faster than any other segment, which is what makes it an exciting area to be. And what does that mean? That clearly means that you're going far more branded, far more aspirational towards a lifestyle that the brand represents. And we've been seeing that post-COVID, that change has been even faster than we ever saw it before. And I think the wealth is being more and more concentrated, and therefore premiumization becoming more and more important for retailers like us.
I think fundamentally two drivers for this. One is the fact that in India, GDP growth has been exceeding and is going to exceed every other country in the world, which means there's going to be a larger and larger number of people with higher income groups. A recent study put it at, I think, about 30 lakhs income over the next 7 years. You're going to quadruple the number of households. The second lever, and this I think we've seen it, if you just look back at 20 years back at how 30-year-olds were consuming versus how 30-year-olds are consuming today, you straight away know the difference. The second part that's happening perhaps a little more quietly is actually the generational shift that tends to happen every decade or so. And the shift in attitude to consumption that young consumers bring in. Their attitude to brands, what kind of brands are authentic, what deserves a price premium, some of that's also set to change.
Hi. I think people are traveling a lot more than they did ever before. And I think the global exposure and understanding of what's working in the global market is also influencing the way they're consuming when they're back home. And I think that's where a lot of desire for premium brands and what the global great brands are is sort of increasing. Also, the younger generation in India is spending a lot more on the experiences, whether it is an experience of traveling or whether it's an experience of going and consuming a brand in one form or the other. So I think both these trends are hugely influencing the way premium segment is growing into India over the last few years.
Yeah, can you hear me? Okay, fine. Thank you for having me as part of this panel, and good day to everyone here, although it feels like there are more people on the panel than in the audience. I think on premiumization, basically the way we look at it at least is that I think Indian consumers are really leveling up in many ways. We're stepping out of our own shadows. And premiumization very often is only linked with price, you know. But I think although as consumers we have limited means, but we have an unlimited desire to consume, you know, and we are kind of feeding that desire by placing greater emphasis, you know, on quality, on design, on technology, on performance, which I think really bodes well for the industry. And I agree with the gentleman here when he said what we see as well is that premium segment of the market is growing at 1.5 times that of the value segment. So, yeah, it's bodes well for the industry.
Thank you everyone for your views. Absolutely. Urbanization, the whole increase in disposable income, right? And the aspiration and the way the Indian demographics is changing is also one of the reasons why the premiumization has become a little more common. But then it comes with its own set of how do you keep that, right? So maybe with that, we will just get into a segue in terms of how technology plays a part. So maybe Venkat, I would ask you, how do you think a digital transformation or how do you intertwine technology to give that experience to your premium customers? And any suggestions for our audience out here?
Yeah, I think we have moved in a very kind of seamless way into combining technology and we call it tech with touch. Because the premium consumers, especially those in the higher end, they want personal attention. Often it is in-store experiences rather than e-commerce kind of thing. But at the same time, there is a lot of engagement happening on the web, on the website, on the apps. So I think companies which have invested early on in the right CRM, web commerce, analytics, all those technologies would end up benefiting, engaging with all these in the seamless manner, and in a way leaving them to shop and experience the brands in a way they most like to, they're most comfortable with, without predetermining that this is the way or that is the way. And I think that's what is happening with us.
Thanks, Venkat. So absolutely, I mean, the rate at which we are growing, we would need technology to accelerate this whole thing and give that experience back to customers. While, as you mentioned, there is obviously a competition from e-commerce and all, but this segment would always be someone who would want to be treated differently. Absolutely well said. So moving on, so I think the customers right now are becoming very conscious about sustainability and handcrafted sustainability, handpicked is something what everybody would want and are willing to pay a premium. So Dilip, next one to you. I mean, High Design has been an aspirational brand for a lot of us growing up and even now. How did you manage that exclusivity and how did sustainability play a part? And maybe if you could just share some thoughts on that, that would help.
I think sustainability is something that's built into the DNA of a brand. It's very difficult to impose it on top. Oh, it's working, let's do it. Then it ends up being fake. We started right from the beginning with the idea of it. And the tough part is you actually never really achieve it. You know, you keep trying, you keep working at it. You get to a further degree. You know, we might use vegetable tan leathers, but then the dyes I use are chemicals, so on. So I think sustainability is something that you keep working towards. You know, you make sure your factory is solar powered, that, you know, your materials are either recycled or ecological. How does it affect the customer? I think the customer, is not that the customer comes to buy that as such, but the customer's relationship with the brand changes. The customer trusts you more. It feels there's a greater integrity. I think it's more the relationship, the emotional relationship to a brand that changes there than the fact that, oh, I'm going to buy a sustainable bag. I think that's not what happens there.
Absolutely. So maybe Karthik, you would want to add to that in what you're doing at Puma and...
Yeah, first of all, 100% agree with what he said, without question. I think for us, it's really integral to everything that we do. We very firmly believe that there is only one forever. We're going to try to make it better. Okay. So in terms of right across the supply chain, we have actually committed to the 10 for 25 targets. We're making good progress there. And as of today, like more than, I think, 80% of our products are basically adhering to our sustainability index, which means either preferred textile or certified sources. And I think as far as the consumer is concerned, especially the young consumer, the Gen Z, it's important for them. And they want, I think this is one of the set of values that they expect from our organization as well, you know.
Thanks, Karthik. That really helps. So while you touched upon Gen Z and millennials, so maybe Abhishek, the next one's for you. CSR is also something which people are very passionate about, right? In terms of the younger generation is very particular about the sourcing as well as what the company is giving back. And a lot of buying pattern is also about how do they do that. So any views about what you are doing specific for the CSR?
So actually everybody kind of feels कि sustainability के बारे में बात करेंगे or if we talk about these things, it's all about expense. Uh, you know, it's very surprising and, you know, data will show you that if you start investing towards sustainability, you will be so surprised to see how much money you start saving automatically. So it's not just about investing and trying to become more sustainable. You will realize automatically you start making money. It may be a little bit longer term, but you will see that savings start to pour in. And the most simple example is solar power. So even if you do invest a little bit more in the beginning, like for example, for our malls, we are now touching almost 3 megawatts of solar power. And in the going 5 years, I would imagine we will be almost more than 60-70% of our malls will function on solar power. Today, my electricity bill for one shopping center touches about 2 crores a month. Now imagine taking 60-70% of that from solar. So that also becomes a lot of saving. So this mindset of sustainability means only kharcha and expense and no return. I think that's wrong. वो धीरे धीरे you know people are realizing that it's actually saving. So these are some of the larger steps, and then there are smaller things that you can do from a shopping center perspective, where you are trying to recycle water, you are trying to do you know more sustainable installations, etc., etc. So slowly when you start talking about this and the people who are walking into your shopping center, they're all people who live around you. And once they see the effort a shopping center is doing towards those initiatives, they kind of start developing that bond, because India is not a place where a lot of tourists are coming to shopping centers, at least in where we operate. It's more the local people coming to you again and again. And I think over time they start realizing the value. And that is what we are trying to put into our centers.
Got it. Got it. So, so I'm sure the demographic is very different, right? And urban and tier two cities. So maybe Abhishek, a question for you. You are getting a lot of brands in India through the franchisee of apparel. So do you see, and I'm sure you have a lot of shops, in various malls, right? So do you see a difference in the buying pattern, and do you want to, is it more towards the premium consumption is more in urban versus tier two cities? Any thoughts on that?
Definitely, I think the urban centers or tier one towns have a better representation and buying capacity for premium. But also, if you look at it from a model perspective for any retailer, if your sales per square foot are lower in a tier two town, so are the other things. Your rental expenses vis-a-vis what you would pay into a tier A town are different. Your other cost structures are different. So I think there is a model to go into the tier two, tier three town, depending on a certain price proposition and a category proposition that the brands can have. So if you're able to get that right, I think there is definitely a market for premium products. And we see our e-commerce really growing more into the tier two, tier three towns for a lot of our premium brands, because there is a set of customers, maybe not enough critical mass for us to open a store, but still, you know, I think e-commerce is the route to get into some of those towns, if not the stores, but there is definitely value for businesses to look into that.
Okay, so you are saying that the e-commerce is helping you reaching the people even in tier two who have
Absolutely.
aspiration and also
Absolutely.
the ability to buy premium products.
Yeah,
Great,
absolutely.
great. I think that gives us a segue to Suraj in terms of supply chain, right? So do you want to share about what are any challenges in terms of supply chain, or do you see any kind of factors which could inhibit this this exclusivity, or people would want to do that? How do you make sure that the supply chain and all are intact? Otherwise, people would lose that experience, especially in this whole world of quick commerce also, right? I mean, when things are coming in 8 minutes, 7 minutes, how do you keep that momentum with the premium customers?
I'm not sure there's a lot of challenge in the supply chain. I think we've been, in terms of serving premium customers, brands, organizations have been waiting for the demand to start turning up and to meet it with the right distribution solution, brand solution, etc. Therefore, if you look at it in anything Western where the West is there to, and China is there for a lot of the raw materials and so on. In Indian wear, it's been a little more difficult, but thanks to pioneers like High Design and a lot of the designers, a lot of ecosystems have been created in pockets. What we are trying to do is trying to make sure as a lot of these brands scale up, the infrastructure also scales up. But that's a challenge that can be managed. In one of the brands I manage called Tasva, we're trying to set a slightly different idiom for quality of products. And therefore that can be a bit, because all the vendors that exist have to be retrained. But it's part of new market creation, and I think we should be able to do that.
Do you want to add to that, Dilip?
Okay. You know, supply chains, sure. There's a backward supply chain of goods coming to us, raw materials coming to us, and there's supply just supplying our goods out. I would say, to me, the larger problem in India is actually the backward linkage. I mean, getting raw materials for our products and at the quality levels we want is, unfortunately, a lot of it is international. And that supply chain problem is much more to me than supplying to my stores. That's relatively okay. It's not really a problem. But the backward linkage is, if you're going to land yourself up in India, it's a problem.
Interesting. That's a very interesting view. So maybe one question to you, Venkat, before maybe I'll give it to the audience. So audience, if you want to ask one or two questions, just think over it before I ask one to Venkat. So Venkat, so we all know how Tanish, Titan, Zoya and all have been crafted, right? How are you able to manage to get the customers in a completely non-format kind of a thing where jewelry people are buying from a lot of other shops? How did you get to that, and how are you continuing to keep your clientele from an unbranded to a very, very premium branded, Mia, Beat, Zoya, and all of those? Any tips for our
I think
audience?
people are able to recognize quality when they see it. And in the last 5-7 years, we have expanded in a very significant way into the deepest parts of Bihar, for example. You know, we are in Raxaul, we are in Madhubani, we are in Sitamarhi, we are in Saharsa, we are in Siwan, really small towns in Bihar, where, I mean, the Tanish store it's almost like a palace in a town like these, in towns like these, and where we deliver the best standards of customer experience, the whole mahal-like design and the architecture of the store. And we are also now doing a lot of what we call art and craft from that area. For example, Gond art and architecture in Raipur, which is drawn from the Chhattisgarhi culture. So I think the connection with the local people, and there are enough and more people in the smallest of towns with money and with sort of latent desires which are waiting to be sort of stoked. And I think by delivering an exceptional level of customer value proposition across aspects and having a relationship which is very akin to the local jeweler, because we have mastered the art of that relationship building at scale, which the local jeweler always had. And I think this combination of a brand and relationship is what is keeping us going month after month.
Absolutely bang on, well said. So yeah, maybe we will just check with the audience if they have. Otherwise, I have one final question for all of you. Anyone, any questions from audience? We don't need to be. Okay, so I think we have kind of heard about the rising disposable income, the change in the demographic, people's affinity towards sustainability and doing the right things, the ethics, and also the trust, right? And people are willing to pay primarily because of their maybe the peer group or even their because they are well traveled, so they are aware of what's happening. So these are the trends which is increasing the current premiumization and the value people are willing to pay for the premium brands. And this is what is driving the current one. I would want each one of you to say maybe one or two trends which would help this to grow and continue to sustain in the future. Either the demographic would increase, or within the premium we would have much more niche, much more segments, right? When this whole, when the number of people become premium, maybe they increase. Either we would have that, or what do you think in the future this would hold good? What would be the trends to continue? Maybe we would start from Karthik this time.
Yeah, sure. I don't think it's this or that, it's this and that. So basically, the ones who are already within the segment will spend more, and there'll be more people obviously entering the segment.
Absolutely. Entering,
Okay.
no, yeah, more people entering the segment. And do you think you would further categorize that, or
Yeah,
what would work?
I don't have a crystal ball to tell you that, but I can just say that the future is going to be different from the past in ways we can't imagine right now. I think it's a one-way street, and frankly, I think in India at least, we're just scratching the surface. You know, so it's a great time
Absolutely.
for the premium space. I think supply has to keep up with demand, and I truly hope that policy helps it and not hurts it.
Thank you.
I
Abhishek.
think as the market grows for premium products, brands also have to continue to evolve, because they would need to appear to a lot more wider set of people than they did before. So concepts like inclusivity or things like that will become a lot more important as things go forward. So I think being able to evolve with the changing target audience is going to be very important for businesses to look at.
Agree.
I think one of the interesting things that's set to happen is the emergence of more clear mini Indias. I think there could be, for example, in the premium ethnic space, largely driven by taste. I think there could be different customer cohorts for brands, and brands will have to choose where to specialize in, right? So because different geographies, different customers in different life cycle stages are evolving differently. One of the interesting things that I see happening in real estate is, as there are larger and larger malls coming up, there are also smaller and small neighborhood properties coming up, and demand exists in both. So brands sometimes will have an interesting choice to make, but that essentially comes from how consumers are evolving, and that's what one has to keep a watch out for.
Absolutely.
I think one of the most interesting things, and I think you must be struggling with it, I think premiumization also means certain amount of exclusivity.
Yeah.
Now, when you have, I don't think you can be for everyone. And as we become more and more premium, we may have to face the issue of becoming more exclusive and actually narrowing down your customer base so that you can have a more premium, higher priced product. It's very difficult to say that, oh, I'm going to be very exclusive, but I'm going to be with everyone. I think there's a conflict there.
Yeah.
And that's something that we will increasingly face.
I think some of the things that companies can certainly do, and we are, doing many of those, which is create brands, sub-brands, formats, same brand, different formats for top-end premium. And I think one very important thing that companies, and we've just started doing, is organization structure and capability. Because the same people who were, in the mass market, whether it is manufacturing, marketing, sales, any function you take, people function, we were all typically looking at a certain mass India, whereas this premium requires a mindset of a very different kind, and therefore structure and capability of those are key.
And last but not the least, Abhishek. Yeah.
So I would not want to include luxury into this, but how much ever the market moves towards premiumization, I think India may one thing will remain common कि उस in that premiumization also what is the value that the customer is going to derive. The value part will remain there even in terms of premiumization. If somebody is buying a car today for 1 or 2 crores, he will still think about what is the average that car is going to give. It's not like he will forget about it. So how much ever premiumization happens, the bottom line of value of that product and what value the customer perceives will always remain the same. So that unique part of India, we all have to be, aware about.
So yeah, absolutely. I'm sure our so-called middle class ethos will continue to be with us even if we pick up premium products. So maybe, yeah, absolutely. So thank you so much for sharing your views. So we all believe that with India's growth, there is more and more disposable income, and more world travelers, and more people who would be wanting to buy those premium products and be associated with that, and hope this segment grows and the nation grows. So thank you so very much for taking your time, gentlemen. Thank you very much. I hope the audience also found this very useful and relevant.
Hope this segment grows and hope the nation grows. And with leaders like yourselves, I'm sure that's exactly what we're looking up to. So thank you so very much for your presence right here. And I'd like to request ma'am to please present each of you with a memento, and then we'll do the group picture. Ma'am, may I request you to please present you all with the memento right here, and then we'll have a group photograph. I would like to thank each of our speakers for joining us for this very special panel discussion right here. It's been an absolute pleasure that you could be a part of it and sharing what your beliefs are and how is it that we can decode the new retail code, how is it that we can thrive in a fast changing world today. And like I said, that one after the other, some spectacular sessions have been lined up for today. Later in the evening, of course, we're going to celebrate our victory, what our brands are creating today, while we have the award ceremony, and we're all looking forward to enjoying with you. So once again, a big thank you to you all. And to thank Ms. Vedula, may I please request Ms. Reema Punya to join us on stage and give us an opportunity to thank ma'am for moderating this session and bringing out such fantastic thoughts from all our panelists. Requesting you all to please inch closer for a group photograph so we can capture the moment right here. Thank you all for joining us.